Chakra Power. Hello, this is Chris speaking. Wake up with video about chakras. For a long time, I have not thought that chakras were so incredibly important, and I have neglected that part of Indian spirituality for some time. I have specialized in meridians and nadis a lot, and acupuncture channels, or whatever you want to call them, but not so much in chakras until a few years ago, when I realized that they are important after all. The two reasons why I underestimated chakras initially was, firstly, because there's a lot of bogus information out there that is very distracting. 99% about what you can read and hear about chakras is complete bullshit, in my view. The second reason is that it is usually linked to this whole Kundalini thing, which I also think is largely bullshit. And the third reason is that one of the few teachers I have met in India who taught this kind of stuff was obviously a fraud. So I had a very hard time connecting to this topic until it came by itself when this whole spiritual awakening process started for the second time, and the Chris thing. Also the chakra thing started by itself, and I could observe it and learn a lot about it. And then I looked for information and courses and proper knowledge about it and found some really cool stuff. So, to summarize, chakras are real, just as meridians, nadis are real. They really do exist, just as your visible body does exist, just as your nervous system, your blood vessel system, your lymphatic system, and so on exist. Same thing. And it is possible to feel them physically, like you can also feel your hand or your teeth or your eyes or your skin. And it is also possible to perceive them. I wouldn't say seeing, because seeing we already think it's something like what we usually do with our eyes. But it's possible to perceive them. And it turns out that it is really, really effective to activate, deblock, and heal your chakras. And later, when they're deblocked and healed, to charge them, to fill them up. Because what usually happened in our childhood is that they were hindered in their usual development. They are underdeveloped, stunted, damaged, especially the third chakra, the chakra of willpower. Most of us grew up in a society where willpower is suppressed in children, sometimes violently. And all kinds of trauma, whatever trauma happens, is usually also having an impact on the third chakra. So it's very, very important to deblock your third chakra, and then all kinds of cool things start to happen. One of the things I noticed is when chakras are healed is that memories come back. Memories of things of a long time ago that you don't remember anymore at all, that you thought you had forgotten, that are totally off the normal day-to-day consciousness. They start flooding back, coming back. And that can be very helpful. And what you should not do, in my opinion, is to try to find this Kundalini thing and raise it up. It's completely this idea of raising something up there from the lowest chakra to the highest chakra. I think it's both wrong and dangerous, because these chakras, they are all equally important. There's no higher and lower chakra. Only because we stand up, one is higher than the other. It would be more logical even to go from the so-called highest chakra downwards, to channel this higher energy, when you want to call it like this, and bring it down into the matter. But even that is an oversimplification. It's just necessary to heal whatever chakra is damaged or blocked. And it's different with everyone. For someone is the first chakra, for someone is the fifth chakra, for someone is the fourth chakra, who knows? That's where you have to start. I'm offering a course next week, starting next week, about how to do that. And if you're already quite conscious, you may apply to participate by email. Also, it's very, very important to know that there are more than 7 chakras. There may be 7 main chakras, but it's like with the acupuncture points. There are 365 acupuncture points plus extra points, and most people think around 100 of them are the most important. That's not true. They're all equally important. And that's the same with the chakras. You never know which ones are the important ones for you. It may be one of the 7 main chakras, or the 3 main dantians, like it is called in Chinese, ancient Chinese medicine. But it might be another one. It may be one on your hand, on your foot, or somewhere else. There are many chakras. They're also linked to the granthis. They are energetical knots in something that you could call your aura. For some reason I have to use all these hippie new age terms. I'm sorry about that, but there are no better terms in English for that. We would have to use Sanskrit terms, which you wouldn't understand unless you know Sanskrit or Urdu or whatever, Tibetan. There are knots in your subtle body, let's call it that, in the subtle body, that can be loosened. And this is easier with functioning chakras, and the other way around also. So the meridians, the nadis, the acupuncture channels, work together with the chakras and those granthis, those knots. All 3 of them influence each other. And it's necessary to work on all of them to be energetically free, so that our subtle or vital body is functioning properly, and that we can also move freely and perceive freely within the vital subtle world, which is only a transition, of course. Our aim is the so-called mental world, which doesn't have anything to do with the mind, our day-to-day thinking mind. It's just called mental world in English because we don't have a better term for it. It's again a translation problem from Sanskrit into English. But to get into the mental world, we need to do some training. Most of us, not all of us. Some people who are enlightened, to whom enlightenment happens, they go there directly and they don't need to do much in the vital subtle world first. But for most people, it's at least helpful to train a little bit in the subtle vital world before they can move into the mental world. And for that, we need to train our meridian system, chakra system, and to untie those knots And also because enlightenment, I like Susan Siegel's term, collision with the infinite. Enlightenment can be a collision with the infinite. It can feel quite uncomfortable in the beginning, quite disconcerting, total chaos. Because you can experience a total loss of control, because you have really never controlled anything in the first place, but that becomes very, very apparent suddenly, and that can be really scary. The sudden loss of the ego can be very scary. We all want to disidentify from our ego, to get rid of our ego, but when that actually happens, it can be really terrifying for some time. And in my view, it's only my view, and it doesn't have to be like that for everyone, but in my view, it is easier if your energetical system, your vital, subtle system, meaning your meridians and your chakras and so on, are in balance, are healed first. That can be very helpful. It's not necessary to reach enlightenment, but it's helpful when it happens. It also ties in with what Carlos Castaneda described as the assemblage point. The assemblage point is a point in our subtle body that determines what we perceive and experience. And usually it's fixed on one point. This is also what Gurdjieff called the Kanda-buffer organ. The fixation of this point in one position, so we always perceive the same type of reality. If and when we move this assemblage point, we perceive another type of reality, like a parallel world. And we can do funny stuff, siddhis and vibhutis and so on. Like described in Carlos Castaneda's books or in Paramahamsa's Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, and in other books. Those things are really possible if you shift this assemblage point, but it's not that easy. But it's easier if you clean up your channels and your chakras first. And also less uncomfortable. Usually when people, for example, I've talked about the third chakra, when people start healing and activating the third chakra, it feels uncomfortable. It feels like a punch in the stomach or nausea. This just means it's not healed yet. This will go away the longer you practice it. So, interesting field of study here. I tried a lot and learned a lot in the last years about this, and it gets more and more interesting. The world is indeed a stage, as Shakespeare said. Okay, thank you to all my patrons. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Thank you for joining me as a Patreon, and see you soon.